And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Heather Mader, who has lived with an extraterrestrial, and it was one of the most amazing experiences in her life, which we're going to learn about today. Heather, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Hi. So first I want to say thank you so much for having me. And I love what you do. I wanted to be really clear and say how important the work that you're doing is. And I've been really enjoying just watching all of it unfold on your channel. And thank you. It's important work. And I'm glad I get to be a part of it.
Well, thank you for that, Heather. And I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us today. And with that note, how did you come to live with an alien?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm just a normal person.
Mm-hmm.
So just a normal person. I didn't think anything like this would ever happen to me, although I've had a lot of spiritual experiences. We met at a restaurant and it was the craziest thing. It was one of those moments where you meet someone's eyes and they meet your eyes, and then it's just, there's this connection. And that's how I felt. I was just like, oh, I just really want to talk to you. And he's like, I really want to talk to you. And we talked anyway. And then we talked so much, the restaurant closed down. I mean, that's how long. And then we went back to my house. And I just felt this incredible connection to this person. And it was so crazy because from that moment that we met it to the next year, we didn't spend any time apart, really. It was just like, that was it. It was, very fast and unbreakable, I guess. So, but I will say, so that started the journey of me understanding who I was dealing with. And it happened, the very first night was one of those moments where we were talking about something. And I remember looking at him and thinking, I could see he was getting excited. We were talking about something and he was getting really excited. And I saw this flash in his eye. And I thought, well, that was weird. It was like a flame almost in his eye. And I thought, oh no, you just the light must have just hit something a certain way. And I didn't think much of it. And we kept talking and whatever. Anyway, so time went on and there was a lot of weird little things that started occurring that made me question. I don't just question myself, really, because you just start thinking, okay, am I going crazy? I'll start out with some of the things that were smaller first. So one day we were in the kitchen and these are, I'll try to go in a timeline, but I can't always remember it exactly in a timeline. But we were in the kitchen and we were talking and he said, I'm pretty strong. I could pick you up with one hand. And I was like, come on, I'm a big person. And I said, you could not pick me up with one hand. And he says, oh yeah, I could. And he was a little person, very, I would say, I would want to say frail. He wasn't frail, but he was not a big strapping person. He was, And so then so he said, do you want me to show you? And I said, yeah. And I said, yeah, go ahead, And so he said, okay, he's like, I'm going to grab you right here. And he's like, and you put your hand here. And he's like, I'm not hurting you. I'm not going to hurt you or anything. I'm just going to show you. And I did. And he picked me up just with one hand. And it looked effortless. It felt effortless. And then he set me back down and I was like, what the hell, So there was that. And then one time we were talking about something and I didn't want to answer the question. And he said, well, he just kept pressing me to answer it. And I didn't want to answer. And all of a sudden I felt something in my head being manipulated, like in my brain. I know that sounds crazy, but I felt it. And I turned around and I said, stop that. And he said, what? And I said, whatever it is you're doing, stop it. And it's like, in that moment, I realized that I knew that something was happening, but I didn't know what, and I knew it was him. And I'm also an empath too, so that could have been part of it as well, is that I often can feel what other people are doing or feel what they're feeling. I could feel him digging around in my mind for that answer. And I said, you do not have permission to do that. And then it stopped immediately. And that was one of those moments where I was like, okay, this is weird, something. And then I really started paying attention to him. And I'm like, this man hardly ever eats food. That was another thing. It was like he ate occasionally, but it was very rare and not very much. And he, this is so weird to talk about, but I don't talk about this, first of all. I just want you to know, like, this is not something I go around telling people, because, I've
Sure.
told just a handful of people. But he would eat lemons all day long, like lemons and lemon powder and lime powder. I know that sounds weird, but like just that, and not like oranges or anything, just like sour powder. But he wouldn't eat like, he ate normal food just very rarely. It was strange. I started just he didn't sleep a lot. Maybe an hour or two. It was almost like he was kind of going through the motions of sleep, but I swear, even I would go to bed at night and he would be up all night. And then by the time I would get up, he would be up already, So that was some of the strange behavior I noticed. And then I think the first time I really, really, really was undeniably knowing that something was going on with him was we were out taking photographs one day. And I slipped and fell on a railroad track. And I really hurt my wrist. I mean, really badly. And we came home and, I was crying. I was like, what am I going to do? I'm a chef and an artist. And I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to make money if my hand is broken? And I was crying and everything. And I ended up I had made plans and I ended up going out to dinner anyway with a friend. And while I was at dinner, I passed out from the pain of my wrist. So it was really bad. And I went to the emergency room. They took x-rays and they said, yeah, you have 3 breaks, in your wrist. So we're going to, wrap it up. We're going to wrap it up. And when the swelling goes down, you'll see an orthopedist, excuse me. You'll see an orthopedist and then they'll tell you how bad it is and what they're going to do about it. So I waited, a certain amount of time before I went to see the orthopedist. But in the meantime, what happened was I came home from the ER and I was really upset. And he said, you know what? Lay down. I want you just to lay down and relax. And he said, don't worry about it. I got you. And I was like, okay, whatever that means. I thought, he's going to pay my rent or, whatever. But he propped my arm up on a pillow and he said, close your eyes. And he came over to me and I just felt what I would describe as like a pulling sensation. Like if you had a piece of satin laying over your arm, and if someone just lifted up that satin, there's like a soft pulling. And that's what I felt. I just felt this over my wrist, this soft pulling sensation. And I just remember drifting away, and then that's it. I just don't remember anything else after that. And I woke up the next day and I was like, my wrist is remarkably better, remarkably. And I kept thinking, this is crazy. And he wasn't doing very good that day. He seemed really down and just low energy. And he kept staying in bed, which was unusual for him. And I asked him, are you okay? And he said, yeah, but how's your wrist? And I said, it's great. And I said, it's really great. I feel like I don't even need the little thing they gave me, the little sling or whatever. And anyway, I went to the orthopedist like a week later, and he came in and he put my x-ray up next to the other x-ray. And he said, well, I don't know. I don't know what to say. He said, you can see that you have breaks here. I can see the bruising, left over on your arm, but I don't see any breaks. So whatever you did, keep doing it. I said, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think my friend, healed me. And he said, whatever, because they don't really believe you. And I don't think he had any words for me. And I didn't have any words for me. I remember going home and asking him, I said, did you heal me? And he didn't answer. He was very evasive about those kind of questions. And so, life goes on, right? I felt at that moment that I knew that he was something, and I know people can be healers and all that stuff. So I think that's what I imagined was going on. Okay, so now some of the weirder stuff. One day so sometimes we would be talking and we would, be laying in bed or whatever. I would be laying in my bed and he would come in and we would be talking and fall asleep. So it was one of those times where, I was like, oh, we fell asleep. I'm sleeping. And you know how you can see light even though your eyes are closed? You can see it through your eyelids. So I'm sleeping and I see light and I'm like, oh, we forgot, we fell asleep talking and we forgot to turn the light out, So I open up my eyes and I'm like half asleep and I realize the light is in the room and it's coming from beside me. And I look over and he is emanating this glowing light and it's just coming out of his skin. And he's like, I don't know, this far raised up off of the bed. So I freak out, and I'm like, and as soon as I did that, he fell back down and the light went away. Like the second it was acknowledged or whatever. And then he woke up and he said, what's going on? And I was like, I said, there was light and you were up off the bed and like, I'm stammering, trying to make sense of what I just saw. And he was like, oh, you must have been dreaming. And I was like, I wasn't dreaming, I know when I'm dreaming. This was not a dream. And he just didn't acknowledge that happened. So, yeah, so there was that. And then again, another time, he went to visit, this was another time. He went to visit a friend. He said, I have to go visit a friend of mine. She has breast cancer. And he's like, I'm going to be gone for a couple of days probably, and then I'll come back. And I said, okay. Well, he was gone. And when he came back, it was like he was so sick. I mean, just so sick. And I thought, like at first I thought, did you catch a cold or, what had happened? But occurred to me, I'm like, no, he's really sick. Like, he's coughing up blood. He's blowing out blood out of his nose. He was just gray. His skin color was just gray. And he was sick for about a week or something like that. And then one day it was like, I just woke up and he was fine, like nothing had ever happened. And I asked him sometime later how his friend was, and he said, oh, she's fine, she's great, she made it through, you know. And I started really, really pressing him about the healings and asking him, you know, what was going on, and had he always been a healer? And he said, well, this is when he started giving me some bits of information about him. And he said, basically, he said, I'm not a healer per se, but I can, you know, leverage that. And I said, what are you? And he's like, well, I'm not from here. And I thought, well, none of us are from here, you know, like none of us are from here. But I said, what do you mean you're not from here? And I said, like, are you an angel? Because I didn't have the vocabulary at that time. This was quite a long time ago. I didn't have the vocabulary for what I was experiencing with him. And he said, you know, he said, I don't know if angel is the right word. I said, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm here kind of on punishment. And I said, punishment? He said, yeah, like I did a lot of bad things and I'm here to make it up to humanity. And I said, why me? And he said, I was definitely sent here for you. And, you know, you're one of the people I was here for. And so, and then it just made sense, that feeling, because when I had seen him the first time, there was such an unbelievable connection that could not be broken. And I can't even explain how intense it was, you know. And then he explained that, and you know, is one thing about him is like the more questions I asked, the more he shut down. So I had to just catch him in these little moments where he would give me these pieces of information, but it wasn't like he just sat down and laid out a map. This is who I am. This is what it is. Da, da, da. So it was, and a lot of what he said was, you know, you're not meant to know everything. You're not meant to know everything, and I can't share everything with you. But anyway, so I think the most pivotal moment for me, and this was one of those situations where like everything up to this point, for some reason, I just had kind of reconciled within myself that, you know, maybe it didn't happen. And it's just a weird thing that we do, right? We just want to believe that these things didn't happen, this wasn't real or whatever, because it's just not in the realm of normalcy, I guess. But this happened one night. I'm sleeping, and as usual, he's not sleeping. And it was like 3 a.m, and I thought, when is this man coming to bed? Like, I just, and we weren't romantic, by the way. This was like an incredible friendship, you know. But I'm just making that clear. But anyway, so I said, when is this man coming to bed? And I get up and I'm, you know, sleepy. And I walk through the house and I'm making my way through the kitchen, and I notice that the back porch is open, the porch door. And I open up the porch door all the way and I look outside, because that's where he spent a lot of his time, even in the middle of the night. And there in my backyard, he's in the middle of the yard, and his body is slumped down with his head is down like this, and coming out the back of his head, or from where I could see, these giant tendrils of white mist. these giant tendrils, like smoky white mist, and they're extending up into the air like 15 feet in the middle of my yard. And I just stared at him. I just stared at him for a minute, and then I literally just turned around and closed the door and walked back through the house and laid back down in bed, and just I laid there forever, just trying to understand what I had just seen. And eventually I fell asleep. and that was the experience where I knew I was dealing with somebody or something much greater than just, not that the other ones weren't intense, but this was like, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't daydreaming, I wasn't sleepwalking or anything weird. I wasn't, intoxicated. Like, there was nothing. I was just, it was undeniable, right? I was kind of scared, to be honest. And so, yeah, I didn't say anything to him. And so we had planned a trip, and we were going to visit my family. So this was just a few days after this event. And so we went on the trip, and we were having this great time. And I was young and still drank alcohol then, right? And so we were drinking alcohol, and we had gotten back to the house, and I, me being a little, what do they call it? Liquid courage or whatever. So me and my liquid courage at the time, I looked at him and I said, I saw you in my backyard. And he goes, you did? And I could just see, like, he was excited. He was excited that I was finally bringing it up, because it was like he knew that I knew, but he couldn't bring it up. And you could see it on his face. He was just like super excited that I was bringing it up. And I was like, yeah, I saw you. And I said, I know you. I know you're something. I know something. And he was like, do you want to see it again? And I was like, yeah, go ahead. I'm drunk, and I'm like, yeah, go ahead. I just want to see it again. Do it. Let's see, and he was like, okay. And then I'm looking at him, and all of a sudden the background behind him just starts shimmering and waving. And then I realize like this shimmering waving, and then I start seeing the tendril smoke coming up out of behind him, and I freak out. I mean, I just totally lose myself. I like lose my, I'm like, and I run, I go backwards. I'm like, I rip the drapes off of my, the windows as I'm trying to get away. He's not chasing me, by the way. I'm just totally like freaked out. So I go into the bedroom. This is at my family's house, by the way. And I barricade myself in there with, like, I move the dresser in front of the door, and I'm just like, what are you? Like, who are you? What are you? And he's like, it's just still me, And he's like, I'm sorry. I thought you said you wanted to see. And I'm like, I said, I don't know who you are. And I start crying, and, it was intense. And he's like, I love you. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. And anyways, so that's when, like, he could know, obviously it was open for conversation at that point, right? Because there's no more hiding. And so I started asking questions, where are you from? And he said, I'm from another, place in the stars. And he gave me the name at the time. But, my brain just, I can't remember the actual planet or galaxy or whatever he said, but he gave me the name of it. And what's funny now, I know more about like, oh, there's Pleiadians and there's like all these, I might be able to say now, but I can't remember. And I'm out of communication now with this person. So, and then I said, what are you doing here? And that's when he explained, he said, basically compared to humans, he's like, I was like a god. And comparatively to humans, I was like a god, and I misused my power, basically my powers. And I was sent here as like punishment, reform, And so he explained that. And that's like the extent of what he explained. And he said, I could take you to where I'm from. And I was like, how, and he said, well, we have to go when you're sleeping. And I said, okay, again, just a little bit skeptical, and not really believing, but I said, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah. And he said, okay, tonight, he's like, when you go to sleep, he's like, just think about, traveling with me. And I said, okay. So the next morning I woke up and I could not wait. I woke up, opened my eyes, and I was like, oh, I gotta, and I said, I gotta talk to him. And so the two of us, I said, I said, we went, and he said, yes. And then I told him the things, and he told me some things, and we just confirmed, like all the things. And it was crazy because there's no words. It was like the best way I can describe what I felt and saw was sounds, vibrations, I guess it would be sounds, made a landscape. And that landscape was made of sound, and it didn't look like our landscape. It didn't look, but there was trees, and there was hills, and there was a sky sort of, but it was made of sound and colors, like vibrant colors, like colors that you could taste. I don't know how else to put it, but it's like you could taste the colors, you could see the sounds. It was like all of the senses that we normally would have here were intertwined into this place. And I just remember feeling like this overabundance of joy. And I remember him and we not necessarily, I don't remember like a body but I just remember kind of feeling like we were just flying around, and those were some of the memories that I carry with me of that. Although more of the specifics have faded over time, but I won't ever forget that feeling, that I had. So, and that was the only time that we ever went. And then the last thing that happened was, my mom called one day and she said, I've got some bad news, and I have cancer in my leg, and they think it's spread to my lymph nodes. And my mom's been battling cancer for a long, long, long time. And, I said, can you help my mom? And he said, yes, I'll try to help her. And he said, but she's long distance. It's harder, but I'm going to try to go to her in a dream. And I'll approach her in a dream when she's in a childlike state. And then I said, tell me something that she used to like as a child. And I said, well, I think she had this like red radio flyer wagon, and he said, okay. He's like, I'll bring her a wagon in a dream, and it'll be like my way of offering my help to her or something. So he tried and tried that way. And every day the next day he would be like, she just will not take it. She will not take it from me. And he's like, I don't know why. I don't know. She's stubborn. She just will not. He said, we got to go see her. So we drove there with the plan to stay and visit my family for like a week. And anyway, so we got there, and he kept, during this time, I noticed one night we were all kind of watching TV and hanging out and stuff, and he kept putting his hand on my mom's leg. And he'd laugh and put his hand on her leg and and it's funny because later on I learned that my dad thought he was hitting on her the whole time, but obviously. But anyway, he did it just right when we first got there, and then the next morning when I woke up, he was gray. His skin was just gray, and he said, "We have to go now." And I'm like, "We just got here. Like, we just drove here yesterday." He's like, "We got to go now." And he's like, "I got to get away from this." And it's like, as we drove back, it's a several days drive. I just saw him turn into like this old man in front of my eyes. Like, he turned gray, his skin wrinkled. He was just coughing up blood, sneezing up blood, throwing up blood. And I just watched him get sicker and sicker. And then I drove 24 hours basically to just get back here. And then when we got home, he was sick for like, I don't know, it was a while. It was like 2 weeks of that. And then he was fine eventually. And then my mom called a few weeks later, and she said, "Well, they did a biopsy and everything is clear." And she's like, "So it's great news, Sorry." But so I'm super grateful. Anyway, my relationship with him was, extraordinary, and I don't necessarily exactly understand where he's from, but and we have fallen out of touch. Our relationship ended with I don't know, he got a job somewhere and ended up moving, and then that was it. One thing he did tell me though, and it didn't stick with me at the time, but he said, this was long before the pandemic, right? And he said, there's going to be a huge, massive population die-off. There's going to be a massive death on our planet. And a bunch, he's like, millions of people are going to die. And he said, you play an integral role in that process, in uplifting people. And I thought, how? Because at the time I didn't have that many friends. I was pretty isolated, and I didn't really think much of it. And then I remember, I just forgot about it. And then I remember during the pandemic, when the pandemic happened, I made the decision. I'm an artist, and I made the decision during that time to start teaching free painting classes. I was like, well, I'm home, and someone in one of my live feeds, the comment said, this is the only thing keeping me feeling positive right now, and coming to these things is the only thing that's helping me. And then all the comments started saying the same thing, and it was like all these people saying how they were uplifted by it. And then all of a sudden I remembered what he said, because at that time I didn't have any access to a lot of people, and so it was just really a beautiful thing to see that come full circle and understand that we all have a place and a role in uplifting others, or whatever our work is. But that's that's my story.
Heather, thank you for sharing your amazing experience with us. If we go back to what you were speaking about earlier, and you were saying he was digging around in your mind, is there any way that you can explain what that felt like?
It's so weird. And the reason why I knew, because it was unlike any feeling I've ever had before. It was, I can't even explain it. I could feel something happening. And I will say this too. I saw him affect change in a room. One time we were talking to a group of people, and we were trying to get a business idea off the ground, right? And we were talking to a group of people who were not very excited about what we were talking about. They were very disinterested. And we took a break, and I went over to him and I'm like, this isn't happening. You know, they're not interested in what we're having to say. And he said, don't worry, they will be. And I thought, okay. And then I came back, and it was like, I remember feeling something shift, you know? And it's like, because I'm an empath, it's like I could feel everybody came back from the break, and then he started talking again, and it was like light bulbs. And I just watched all these people suddenly like on board with what was being said. And I thought, that's the thing. When he did the little mind thing, that's the thing. Or an energy push or something. It kind of felt like that. It was something, it was a shift. I felt it. So I don't know. But yeah, I watched him affect change in a room in a few different times.
Do you think being human or humanoid was his natural body, or it was just something that was created for him while he was here?
No, and no. In fact, he told me, he said, when I asked him about him coming out of his body in my yard, I said, what were you doing? You know? And he said, do you have any idea how exhausting it is to try to stay in this space of a body? It's so small. It's so confining. He said, it's just like, I know I'm not supposed to, but I just need to get out of it sometimes. So I definitely feel that, no, this was not his natural state at all. But it was like the shell that he was supposed to be in to operate in this world, obviously, you know.
Did you ever understand or figure out why he came for you?
I mean, no and yes. It's like, you know how you look at your life and you don't necessarily, in the moment you can't necessarily see what's happening, but you look back on it and you have more of an understanding, right? So I mean, I would say I learned so much about myself during that time, as we do with any person that we get close to, but it definitely changed my perception of life and reality. Also, it allowed me to continue to be a chef and an artist because I was healed and my wrist was really messed up. And then thirdly, he kept my mom around, you know? So, and I don't even know if it's just that. One time he said to me, he said, you have such a big heart and you're such a good person. He's like, you deserve, you know, to have healing and love and all of these things. And it was sweet, you know, but I didn't really take it on, and I don't even know specifically necessarily what that meant, but I just know that it changed me. That whole experience changed my life. And my thought processes about things. And like I said, I haven't told very many people because it's not the kind of thing that you just run around telling people. So we'll see, you know, how that goes. But I think it's important that people know that everyday people can have these kinds of experiences, and it doesn't, it's happening. It's literally happening, even if we're not talking about it.
Even though you're not communicating with him anymore, do you ever get any signs that he's at least still on the planet? Perhaps in dreams or something?
No, it's just a complete disconnect. And also, I just want to point out, he was weird, like as a human person. He didn't have like normal patterns of behavior. A lot of times it was almost like he was imitating patterns of behavior. So it wouldn't surprise me that I didn't feel anything else from him, because it was almost like he was inserted into my life for this little moment and then moved on to the next person or the next mission or whatever the thing is. It was like, that's it. So I don't feel anything. I don't have any signs. Mm-mm.
Do you think he's still here?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I just not for me anymore.
I'm assuming that he must have been under some type of rules that he really wasn't allowed to explain anything to you unless you asked.
I got that impression. And when I asked for my mom's healing, she called, and it's like, I just remember that moment where I looked at him and I was pleading with my heart, please help my mom. But he literally said, you have to ask. And so I think that was part of it for sure. Like, I definitely had to ask the questions. I definitely had to ask for help.
I've been asking that I hope one of these beings will eventually come on and be my guest. So I hope he witnesses this and decides to make an appearance.
I think the fear is to, nobody wants to end up being like a lab rat, right? So there's always that fear of being captured and studied by our government or whatever. And having listened to some of your other guests, I know that does happen. So, maybe that's one of the fears.
Judging from your reaction when you first realized, that he wasn't human, and you ran into the room and locked the door, do you think that's why aliens don't reveal themselves to us, because the public just can't handle it?
Sure. Sure. And I feel like I'm a pretty open-minded person. I have seen ghosts. I have seen them as a child. I've seen them as an adult. I've astral traveled. I have, like I said, I'm an empath. Like, there's a lot of things about me that are fairly open-minded, but nothing can necessarily prepare you for that. And of course, I think when I don't know personally when, but I think when it comes time and the government finally is like, okay, here they are, here we are, here's the cameras, here's the aliens, here's the, when it all is actually becomes revealed, then people are going to have to start dealing with it, and then that'll be a totally different scene. But in the case where we are now, where most of us aren't dealing with that on a regular daily basis, of course, it's just totally mind-boggling. And the thing is I wouldn't think I would be somebody that would freak out. That's what I'm saying, like even ghosts and stuff. Or I've even my dad passed and I ended up using a medium and talking to my father. And so I'm pretty open-minded, but I just can't explain how beyond imagination it is, So yeah, you just can't be prepared for that.
I think a lot of people would say that you are one of the luckiest people on the planet Do you feel that way?
I never thought of it like that. Wow. I always think about other people and I think, wow, you're so lucky to have had that experience. I guess I could be considered really lucky, but I think what's happening is we all have these experiences all the time. Maybe not as vividly obvious as the one that I've had, but I think that we're always dealing with other beings because we just don't know it. You know what I'm saying? So yes, maybe I am lucky, but also don't discount, your own experiences in your own life, all those little things that you think, well, that was a funny coincidence, or that was did I just really see that? Because I mean, that happens. I've seen shadow people, and that happens where you see, out of the corner of your eye, you'll see somebody walk across the room, or you'll see, I mean, those things are real. Those things happen, and we are all just, we are all witness to it, but do we actually believe it? Do we actually take it in? I'm not any more special than any other person, we're all the same.
Since you've lived with him, do you feel like you have the ability to recognize other ETs walking around the planet? And if so, have you seen any?
That's an interesting question. I think I've looked now. Like, it did make me have an awareness that I didn't have before. So I definitely find myself looking for signs of things that aren't normal. But I can't say that I've ever had any other experiences exactly like that one, or that I've been able to identify any other beings specifically, But I will say, I can feel when a person is elevated. I can feel when their energy is elevated, or unfortunately the other way too. But I think that's just more of a honing of my empathic abilities.
Did you ever tell your parents that he's an ET?
I told eventually I told my dad passed, so no, I never told him. But eventually I did tell my mom, and I told her that that's how her cancer went away. And please don't go contacting my mom. Like,
I'm
it's
not.
like,
Oh,
no, not
I'm.
you, but
Oh,
just anybody. Like,
oh.
But I think she, I don't know if she believed it. She might think that I'm just kind of kooky or whatever. But the proof is there. So I don't know.
Did he ever discuss with you why his body becomes so sickly when he heals people?
No, it's just apparent that he takes it on. I mean, you could just see it. He just takes it on and then processes it. And he said, one thing he did say about that, he said, I can't do it all the time. He said, he'd said one time when he first realized that that was part of, what he was doing it all the time, and it almost killed him. And it almost killed this physical body. And so he said, it's not something that he can do all the time. So, but yeah, clearly he takes it on. And if it's something smaller, like my wrist, he was only sick for like a day or two. And then, like my mom, he was sick for a couple weeks.
Did he ever discuss how he got to this planet?
It's a terrible analogy, but this is literally what he said. And I hate repeating it because it sounds so silly, but he said, it's like, imagine a god picked you up and drop kicked you somewhere. And that's what he said. He said, it's like, I really had no choice. It was like a god picked me up and said, this is what you're doing, and drop kicked me here and said, you're on punishment. And that's the most he ever explained about that.
Did you ever witness him communicating with any other ETs?
No. Mm-mm. No, I didn't. Never had that experience with him. Mm-mm.
What do you find inspiring about your relationship with him?
Inspiring. Oh gosh. Well, for one thing, it confirmed what I always knew all along, which is we are not alone. That is insane to think that we would be the only intelligent life forms or semi-intelligent or tinily intelligent life forms in the whole of the universe. That's crazy. I mean, think of how vast the universe is. I remember growing up thinking, and I think that was really common. Like I'm 50, and I think in, my age and younger, we grew up really thinking that we were the center of the universe, and there was something about that just never sat right with me. I just couldn't fathom it. I look out at the stars and I'm like, but if there's planets out there and there's universes out there, how can we be the only ones? It just didn't ever make sense. So the most inspiring thing would just be that it was a confirmation for me. It's like, not to go off on it, but I feel this way when I listen to your show, because it's such a confirmation of the knowing of the knowledge of the things that we already know as humans, right? Like the fact that we're all connected, the fact that we are all little pieces of a bigger entity, and we are here to grow and to learn. Like we are not separate. That is an illusion. That this reality is an illusion. Like all of these things, I feel like just validation for my own remembrances. And I guess that's really what I got from living with him too. Just, okay, I knew that. I knew that was the truth, and I got to actually have it confirmed.
If you called out to him in some way, do you think he would answer you?
That's a good question. I should try. I haven't. I really haven't. I don't even know. I don't know. Maybe. If he's still here.
Can you tell us how it wound up that he just moved into your apartment or house? Like, what was that conversation like?
It was crazy. It was like one of those situations, because he was living with his brother at the time. And it was just one of those situations where we talked that night that we had met. And then the next day it was like, do you want to hang out? Yeah. And then we hang out. And then, do you want to hang out? Yeah. And then, do you want to hang out? Yeah. And it just kept doing this until like a few weeks later, it was like, do you want to just stay? And he was like, yeah, okay, let's stay. I was like, yeah, sure. Okay. And I'm like, okay. And then that's just it. And then it was a year. It just was like that. I mean, I've never had another experience like that before. I mean, yeah, it was so natural and so easy. It was like, it wasn't even a question. And I was also at a time in my life too, where I think I was needing that too, because I had just gotten divorced. I was, on my own as an adult for the first time too. So he provided me with a lot of comfort and support.
Did you ever meet his brother?
Yeah, I did.
Do you think it was another ET or what was he?
No, he was just a normal dude. And yeah, his brother, I don't even know if his brother knew. I asked him one time, I said, who knows? And he said, well, his mom, of course, knew, because she came into his room as a child, and he was floating up out of his crib. And he said that she used to have to tie his leg to his crib. So she knew. And then he said a handful of people that he got really close to over the years knew. So, but he said, and then some people could see it. He did tell me that, actually. I remember now. He said, yeah, he's like, one time I was walking down the street and this lady just walked by me, and she turned around, and I realized that she could see me, like she could see the thing in me or whatever. And people just couldn't really put their finger on it, or whatever. He said, there's some people that could see him, and that I couldn't. I mean, probably people who could see interdimensionally or vibrationally, I guess. But yeah.
So that's interesting. I expected him to come here on a ship or something, but he incarnated here into a body.
Mm-hmm. That's what I understand. And all the way from the time he was a baby.
Have you ever painted him?
No, but it's funny. This interview process and preparing mentally for this interview has been a big deal for me. Mm-hmm. And it's made me remember, because this is not a story I tell very often. I mean, rarely, maybe 5 times I've told this. So in thinking about my situation with him and everything, I've been feeling the little urge to paint what I saw in the yard. It's been like on the back of my mind. I feel myself like mulling over that in my head. I'm not really a portrait artist. I'm an abstract artist, but I can see what those tendrils look like, and I could see what that would look like on canvas to me. So no, I haven't done it, but it's definitely this has been maybe an impetus. Maybe it'll be an impetus for it.
Do you think you could paint the world that you went to when you astral traveled?
Yes, and it wouldn't be anything like what I saw, because there were so many senses involved, like taste and tasting colors and hearing sights, and like I just don't even believe I could capture what the feeling was. There's just a feeling too, and the sound, just the sound there, I can't even explain. It's like nothing I've ever heard before. So yes, I could try to paint it, and then I'm not sure it would translate either.
Are you still giving free painting classes?
I do. Yeah, I mean, I do lives on my YouTube channel, and I do one of my things I've realized, one of my goals in life is to inspire other people to feel good, and if it's through art, then it's through art. If it's through music, it's through music. I used to teach music, and I'm also a chef, so I feed people. And I just think that's just one of the things in my life that I find incredibly joyful, is to inspire others just to feel good about something. And so, yeah, I do teach. And some of them are free, some of them are paid, because we all have to make a living, but yeah.
Do you have an example of your art that you can show us?
I do have, I do a lot of different kinds, but here's an example of some of the work that I've done.
When it's abstract, I guess it's up to the eye of the beholder. Like for me, I feel like I can see a bird in there.
It could be a bird. It could be, for me, like this piece specifically just is about movement and color, and this could end up being a background too for something, because I do all kinds of different work. So that could end up being the background to a collage, or, I do mixed media, so you just never know. And if something sits around too long and it doesn't sell, I end up changing it.
Oh,
so
well.
Nothing is safe. Like no piece of art is safe unless it's hung on the wall, really. And then after that, I'll start looking at it and getting little ideas. So
that's great that you're able to earn a living from it. Do you put your art up like in galleries, or you sell it online, or what?
Most of my art sells through my Facebook page and my YouTube channel and my website. Just social media, basically. But I have only been in a couple galleries. I haven't really focused that. Actually, I started painting just like 4 years ago. So I haven't been really painting professionally for that long.
Sometimes I'll be at a coffee shop or someplace and you'll see like people's artwork up for sale on the wall. Do you ever do that?
I would love to do that. And I think what happened is I started painting in 2019 and then you know what happened. So the whole world kind of shut down for a while. And then after that, I just hadn't really picked that part up yet, but I would love to be in coffee shops and things like that. We'll see what happens. I really like teaching. And so that's really been my focus, is teaching other people to create so they can feel inspired.
That piece that you showed me was real colorful. Do you like to do a lot of stuff with lots of bright colors like that?
I do. And it's weird because I'm like, my home is fairly dark. I really love black. I like to wear a lot of black, but I guess my art is an expression of that part of me that I don't express in other ways, maybe. Like I've never been for example, I'm not a pink person, okay? But would you know that? Right, I'm not a pink person. I really have never been into pink or anything like that, but I just love really vibrant colors, and paint is, oh my gosh. I love seeing paint mixing, and I do fluid art too, so I love big vibrant colors for sure.
As an empath, do you think that you could somehow translate or put feelings into the paintings?
Absolutely. And it's funny because I do it with my food. I can do it with my paintings. I do it with teaching. Pretty much anything I do, there's, when people say I put my heart into it, that's a real thing. It's a real thing for all of us, but people will say over and over, I got your work and I feel something when I look at it. I feel an emotion, and there's a lot of times I'll be having an emotional time in my life for one reason or another, and I'll paint something and it resonates through the painting. You can see it, you can feel it. I can, and other people too. And it's the same with my food. Like when I'm cooking, I'm a chef as well. And when I'm cooking for people, I try to make sure I'm in a positive space, not just for the fact that I don't want not to burn or ruin anything, but really there's an energy that goes into everything that we do, everything. And I don't know if have you ever seen messages in water?
I think so. I mean, maybe some of the research on it at least.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's there. Everything that we do has an energy, and it goes into the things that we do. And it literally changes the pattern of, the results. So, and I believe that, I believe it absolutely can affect. I mean, I feel like I've affected rooms of people as well, just by opening my heart space.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you up for that?
Sure. I'm absolutely up for that. I mean, and I am pretty much reachable all over social media, Heather Mader Art. I mean, my YouTube channel is Heather Mader Art, Instagram, Facebook, or my email address.
Back to your alien friend. Did he ever mention any other races of ETs?
Not really. Like I said, getting information from him was like pulling teeth. It was so challenging, and it's almost like I used to ask him to predict the future. Because I know he could. I know he could see things in the future, and every now and again it's like he would forget and he would say something that was going to happen, and then it did happen. And so I knew that that was part of it. One time I got him to but no, not other races or anything, but I knew that there was gifts he had that he wasn't sharing with me, and information that he had that he wasn't sharing with me.
Well, you're definitely a talented artist. You've had an amazing experience, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us today. And before we finish up, can you give us one last positive message?
Don't forget that we are all connected. We are not separate. I think that is a huge piece of our society that's keeping us in a stagnant place. I mean, every time I look at someone, whether it's, someone that's laying in a gutter, to the preacher, to a doctor, to an old woman, to, the little kid sliding down the slide for the first time in a state of joy. Don't forget that you are those people. You are them. We are each other. And so, choosing to remember that piece and living your life like that every day, it helps you make choices on how you treat other people, because it's not just how you treat other people, is how you're treating yourself. So be kind, be loving, be open. Don't judge others lest you're judging yourself. Be kind to yourself, love yourself. Try to, I know it sounds just really generic, but it's the best advice I could give to any human. And just don't forget, we're all one.
Heather, thank you for that advice, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.